Welcome to the Stack Supplement Podcast, the premier source for supplement news and reviews.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Stack Supplement Podcast, and this is another interview edition with one of the great minds, friends from the still up and coming, although not exactly that new anymore, is RYSE, and we have the president, Brian.
Hey Shane, how are you? Thank you for having me, man. Obviously a longtime fan and friend. We've crossed paths for many years in this industry, so I'm honored to be here as a guest. And looking forward to sharing some feedback on this podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome to having you. And yeah, we've known each other for, I don't know, I can't even remember. It's been a while. Maybe
probably at least, I don't know, more than five, maybe.
I was gonna say 5 years.
Yeah.
I think I met you in Olympia somewhere. But yeah, you're with RYSE now, which is, it's hard to say like how brands have been doing really well in comparison to how well the year has limited them to be able to do. But you guys kicked off the year with the Blackout, the RTD, which was, I thought was a pretty big one. As you mentioned at the time, it's one of the most RTD with the most active ingredients, if I'm not mistaken, or one of. Right. I mean, how did that go for you? It was a dive into a different category. You weren't really on the go before then.
Yeah. So quick short background on myself. I've been in the industry since I think 2006. I started with a company called VP Exports, which most of you might know as Bang Energy today. But that was the first company I worked there for about 5 or 6 years, and then left. And then myself, a guy named TJ Humphreys, and a few other guys actually started a company called ProSups, the makers of Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll, which most of you might be familiar with. We started that company in February 2012. We built that business up to about, over $50 million over 8 years. Probably one of the bigger brands around the world, over 50 countries. I decided to leave that company at the end of last year and join RYSE, which was founded back in November 2017 by Nick Stella. He's the CEO of RYSE and the founder. Over the course of 2 years while I was at ProSups, I had seen RYSE here and there. I remember a point in time when they did a deal with Conor McGregor. Kind of caught my eyes at that time. I was like, man, who are these guys? But didn't really know too much about the brand. So when I came over in January, obviously, I did a lot of research on the brand and really wanted to make sure it was a fit where my skill set makes sense. And, coming to know Nick, Nick's done an incredible job creating, founding, building this RYSE brand over 2 years. He's pretty much been a one-man operation through the process. But Nick is a very smart guy when it comes to digital marketing, social marketing, everything that goes on in that digital world. And we all know that's the future of this industry and pretty much all industries, even prior to COVID, right? That's where everything was kind of going and shifting to. And, for me, that's not a skill set that I own. I'm not that online digital marketing guru. That's just something I've never been able to really get into. Never needed it. Historically back in the day, I've built brands through brick and mortar retail, stores, gyms, international distribution. Online wasn't as big. It wasn't a big deal, over the course of those years. So knowing where Nick's skill set is and where my skill set is strong, which is in the brick and mortar wholesale side here domestically, and really internationally is where I've really been able to excel over the years, especially at ProSups. Travel to a lot of these countries and build some really strong relationships with these customers. Coming over here, knowing that we've got a pretty strong online direct-to-consumer business already, I saw opportunity to kind of build this brand with the brick and mortar retailers that still exist, because obviously it's not what it used to be. There's not as many of them like back in the day, but there's still some really good retailers out there. Gym business here in America is still really strong. And ultimately internationally, that's something and somewhere where I think most people can't compete with me on. And just the simple fact is I've been able to travel to over 30 countries in my life. meet a lot of these international distributors and partners, have dinner with their families, and just build unbelievable relationships. And what most people don't realize, especially being an American brand, obviously, Shane, you're almost American at this point, but you've traveled a lot. But for a lot of these distributors who don't get out of their country, there's a lot of tradition. There's a lot of old school that goes in with this, and how we do business in America is not how they do business in these countries. So when you get invited into dinner with a distributor, and the distributor brings their mom and dad, and you're sitting down around a table, typically drinking some type of alcohol substance, you're basically building a bond. And if you pass the test, they'll shake your hand on the way out, but you've just built a bond that's lifelong. And I've been blessed to be able to secure relationships like that. So, I knew I can really help grow this RYSE brand internationally. So when we came over, the grab and go space, which I know you're a huge fan of.
Oh yeah.
That was something, even back to my VPX days, I sold a ton of Redline. Nobody really talks about Redline anymore, but back in 2007, 8, 9, and 10, we used to sell a lot of Redline. So, and I was selling Redline to gas stations back then. So I got kind of mixed into that RTD game early, to experience a lot of that way before what it looks like today. And then obviously over my tenure at ProSups, we made quite a bit of RTDs there. The first one I made actually was a drink where the powder sat in the cap.
Yeah, the push.
That you would push and the powder would fall in. So, being a guy that, really cares about formulations, and I love to do things, I'm really science driven. I didn't want to make a pre-workout drink that sacrificed ingredients. So back in, it was probably 2013 or 14 when we were looking at making a drink, I didn't want to have to take out, call it creatine, or some of these ingredients that wouldn't be stable in a liquid form. And I wanted to make a drink that was comparable to my powder of Mr. Hyde. So we came out with it. We came up with a system where the same exact powder sit in the cap. You would push it down, the powder would fall into the water. You'd go drink and work out. That later evolved into a different mechanism, which was called the RTG, which was similar. The powder still sat in a system. It wasn't on top. Then we ventured a little bit in the 16-ounce carbonated game. We came out with a product called Hyde Power Potion. We missed a little bit. We failed to do a little bit of our research and flavor systems and things like that. But, right outside of Bang, we were kind of the second largest supplement company to go in on carbonated beverage. That's how way ahead of the curve we were at the time. Unfortunately, we missed the boat in terms of flavor and sweetness levels. But in terms of RTDs, it's something that I've always been a fan of. I'm an RTD consumer personally. And when you look at it from the business perspective, not a lot of people realize this here in America, but the gyms make up more business than the retail stores today.
Oh, wow.
So, a square foot of gyms, you're going to drive by on average, probably 3 to 5 gyms to go from retailer 1 to retailer 2. There's just so many more locations. Another thing you have to realize too is the hardest thing that a store has today, a brick and mortar mom and pop retail store, or if it's a GNC or even a vitamin shop, the hardest thing they have, and again, this is all prior to COVID. So we're not talking anything related to COVID right now.
The current situation.
The problem these retailers were having was getting people in their stores, right? Any retailer. And it doesn't matter. It could be malls, it could be grocery, well, grocery is a little bit different, but most of these specialized consumer packaged good retailers, the hardest thing they were facing was getting people in their stores. Well, obviously gyms don't have that problem, right? Gyms have the consumers. Gyms have the consumers that are buying supplements, right? Most of the consumers in those gyms probably already took their pre-workout or they've got protein at home. So, probably about, 5 to 10 years ago, a lot of gyms tried to sell supplements in the past, but either they didn't want to mess with it because they'd have to hire another employee, and they kind of looked at it, it was kind of, just something they didn't want to mess with. Or back in the day, historically, when you were to buy a brand from, call a distributor, whether it's Europa or Muscle Foods, back in the day, the discounts a gym would get on a product were far less than what the retailer across the street would get, because back in the day, the retailers were doing a lot more volume. So if a gym decided to sell a pre-workout or a protein, by the time they put it on their shelf, it's probably 15 to 30% more expensive than either online or at the store across the street. So probably 5 to 10 years ago, that all kind of changed. And next thing you know, gyms realized, hey, we've got the people. These people are already buying and consuming supplements. We just need to put the right supplements in here at the right price, right? It doesn't need to be necessarily the same exact price as Amazon or online. There could be, you know, maybe it could be $3 to $5 more, but it can't be $20 more. You know what I mean? And gyms started to get behind supplements. Well, next thing you know, gyms started selling a lot of supplements. So when you add up how many gyms there are, whether, Gold's Gym Corporate, Export Fitness, Crunch Fitness, Fitness Connection, UFit, you're just talking massive, massive groups of gyms. And then you get all the mom and pop gyms mixed in between there. So there's tens of thousands of gyms here in America where there's not that many retailer stores. So if you add it up, gym business is really, really strong. Now, not all gyms sell powdered supplements. So some of them will only participate in drinks, RTDs, and maybe bars and snacks. And then you got some of them that have little pro shops where they'll actually sell a good variety of supplements. Knowing how big that gym sector of business is, and also over the years, I've been able to make some really good relationships with these buyers at these very large gyms because, the Gold's Gym Corporate, Export Fitness, Fitness Connection, you need to present to them just like you would any other major large retailer. So they only have X amount of space in their cooler and they have to approve you. So knowing that I've been able to secure these relationships, I knew if we were able to create an RTD here at RYSE, I can kind of immediately go get some new business for us. So, one of the things I realized last year was I saw every brand was focused on carbonated energy, right? Everybody was making, I think we even talked about this at FIBO a year ago or whenever we were there, just everybody was working on carbonated. And I saw a little bit of a shift from consumer moving away from carbonated and kind of going back into the still type of drinks. And I don't know the exact reason as to why. Maybe they felt like, the carbonated drinks, they weren't getting efficacious amounts of actual pre-workout ingredients to go work out. I've never been a person to drink a carbonated drink before I work out. I mean, to me,
it's a tough one for me.
Now, if I'm going to the beach or driving around, need a little pick-me-up, then I see the need for a carbonated drink. So I kind of saw that. So that was actually the first project I took on when I came here in January, was I wanted to make the most efficaciously dosed pre-workout RTD in a still drink that's ever been created. And obviously with really, really good flavor systems. So we started working on it in January. And then obviously, by March, COVID kind of hit, slowed a lot of things down. But since we had the project kind of already going, we continued forward. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, the hardest thing was flavor systems. When you're working with some of these ingredients like dynamine, there's some harder ingredients to flavor over, right? So at the end of the day, as much as we are ingredient guys and we like to see, 6 to 8 grams of citrulline and 1.5 grams of nitrosamine, that stuff is great. But to average consumer, they don't look at that. They still want a product that they feel. They still want a product that they think is good. But ultimately, they want a product that tastes awesome, right? Taste is always going to win. So I wanted to be able to hit all those boxes in this drink. And we were able to do it. And we made a pre-workout, ready-to-drink product with 8 grams of citrulline, 3.2 grams of beta-alanine, 2 grams of betaine, 400 caffeine, and 25 milligrams of dynamine. So, obviously we didn't put creatine in this product, but we felt like we didn't need to. Tons of pump ingredients in there, tons of stimulatory effect with the caffeine and dynamine, but ultimately getting that thing clear, because remember, it's a clear beverage. So we didn't want any floaties. We didn't want anything to settle at the bottom. And then ultimately make it taste awesome. And we were able to do that. We started with 3 flavors. We piggybacked off our #1 selling flavor in our blackout pre-workout, which is tiger's blood. But then we kind of went a little sideways and we said, man, let's make something a little bit more mainstream, something a little bit more millennial, Gen Z oriented. and we went with a Baja Burst flavor. So obviously playing off of the Taco Bell Baja Blast, if you will, which is one of the top selling soft drink flavors in America. So, you know, when you look at the data and things like that, we saw the crossover, and then we also launched a grape. We don't make a grape in anything, but when we tried the grape flavors in this specific format, we just felt like the grape flavors sat really, really well with this ingredient list. And we said, man, we have to do a grape. It tastes that good. So we launched with the 3 flavors. This year for us, the RTD has kind of been our biggest winner, if you will, in terms of sales. I mean, we've been able to get that drink into over 1,000 gyms already this year. Most of the major fitness clubs that we spoke about earlier, Gold's Gym Corporate, which is still over 100 clubs, Export Fitness, which is over 50 clubs, Fitness Connection, which is over 50 clubs, UFit, which is over 150 clubs, I believe, and Crunch, between franchise and corporate, I think they got over 500 locations. So we've been able to get placement in these top gym accounts, which has been huge for us. But I think COVID has helped us a little bit there, obviously, with gyms having to shut down in the early days, you know, call it March, April, May, and June. Gyms were forced to close down because of lockdown. Everything kind of reopened up. Gyms didn't know really what was going on. Next thing you know, gyms started to get packed, and the gym's coolers were empty, and they didn't have any drinks to sell. So on top of that, you had a lot of larger companies who probably were in a different position where, from a risk standpoint, they were exposed a lot more during COVID because maybe they had a lot of employees they tried to retain, a big office and things like that. So, I mean, I bless those guys and thank them for trying to retain employees and not fire people. But there was probably a cost of business associated there where they probably weren't able to innovate. They probably weren't able to keep stock levels where it needed to be. So there was a lot of holes in these coolers when these buyers came back. And you know, I'm a pretty aggressive salesperson when it comes to that stuff, and I attacked that space. And again, because I have the relationships with these buyers, I was able to get these products into their hands. They obviously try them, they sample them. Feedback's been really great. And the great news is it's, for most of them, it's their #1 selling new drink this year. So, and it gets me in the grab and go category. So, you know, we plan on expanding more in that category. We all know that's a growing category around the world. So, you know, we're going to continue to look at different formats, different options to play there. But that's in a nutshell why I decided to start there. And thankfully we did, because it's been huge for us this year. Obviously we don't sell a ton of drinks online. So being a strong online direct to consumer business, it doesn't necessarily fit that strategy. But on the flip side, we've been able to pick up thousands and thousands of gyms, which is exposure for us. Which also introduces
customers,
consumer to the RYSE brand for the first time, which ultimately they could lead, hey, what else does this brand make, right? And the good news is we packaged it off of our Black pre-workout. So if they ever looked into the powder version that we make, they would see that as well. We are working on a 4th flavor as we speak in the RTD.
That was my question, was what was the reason? Because you're saying it's ideal for the on-the-go market, and with beverage, it's not, you can't put everything typically into the beverages in the powder. Was there a reason you went with the blackout rather than just sort of make it more based on your regular, the white branded pre?
Yeah, so, you know, we can get into a caffeine debate. There's you know, a lot of people that are against high levels of caffeine. There's a lot of people that love it. But again, from the data and all the analysis perspective, the higher stimulant products typically sell better. You know, people are looking for the higher stim products. So because we went with 400 caffeine, that's the same caffeine level that we use in our blackout pre-workout powder currently. We felt like it was, you know,
so just aligned better with blackout.
Our white pre-workout, which we call our core series, has 275 caffeine. So it's a little bit less, but we didn't feel like it would cross over with that type of product. And we wanted to try to be as consistent to that as possible.
Because the other one you did this year, if I'm not mistaken, was the loaded bar, which was another kind of first for you. You had the RYSE hadn't really stepped into functional market, protein snacks. It did kind of make sense because you just came off the blackout RTD. I think it was in May you dropped the bar, and it also made sense because Pro Subs, I guess with Pro Subs you had the My Bar and the cookie at some point,
Right.
So yeah, what was I'm assuming the reasoning behind the loaded bar was very similar to just a different area, new category, new, I guess more customers, a different space for RYSE?
For sure. So again, when you look at trending, growing categories, functional foods obviously continues to grow at pretty good incremental rates. And piggybacking off of the success we saw with the RTD, we saw an opportunity to get into the protein bar market, if you will. Now, being that I would say probably 60% of our overall sales right now come in our loaded protein powder. Again, we saw, a lot of crossover of how we can play off of our protein into a protein bar. And again, you mentioned, some experience at Pro Subs. We did make a bar called My Bar, which actually did really, really well the first year. But again, you live and learn, and I learned a lot from the manufacturing side, the operational side. Both bars and RTDs can become very costly if you don't do it right. Even on the carbonated beverage side. So, it's a little bit different when you go outside of your wheelhouse, pre-workout powders and aminos and protein.
Yeah.
When you start messing with stuff where you need a bottle and it's a liquid system, 12 of them go in a box. It's a little bit different, and you got to make sure you've got all the components together, and it can become very expensive if there's changes. Then you're throwing out wrappers or bottles or boxes. So, definitely learned a lot in my experience with those projects at Pro Subs. But we felt like there was a need for a protein bar, and again, everything we do is data driven. So, Nick will send out some surveys to our consumer base asking, hey, if we did a protein bar, would you be interested in it? What type of protein bar? What kind of macros you're looking for and things like that. So that's another great piece, a great thing when you're a strong direct to consumer brand is you get immediate access to your customers.
Yeah.
And that's the difference versus being a brand that sells on Amazon where you don't get that access to the customer, right? So, we're able to really, and they help us navigate flavors we're going to use, maybe the next products we come out with. But again, it's good to get data from these people. And we saw an opportunity for a protein bar. We decided to take the approach of a whole food type of protein bar, not really going after the net 1 gram sugar carb market.
Yeah.
Wanted something that was whole food, tasted really, really good. And that's kind of what we did with the loaded bar. I'll be honest with you, we weren't happy with how the bar came out. We are looking to kind of go back to the drawing board on the protein bar. We might take it to a completely different strategy with that bar, and maybe go with a different manufacturer, maybe create a different type of bar. The good news is we weren't overly exposed on our first run with the loaded bar. Not that the product was bad. I mean, it was a good bar, but it wasn't great in our opinion. And, the threshold for anything we do here at RYSE is great. RYSE is really known for really good quality products, but really exceptional taste. From our proteins to our pre-workouts to our RTDs, people really rave about our flavor systems and taste. And we felt like we missed the boat a little bit on the bar, a little bit of inconsistencies in terms of texture and flavor on some of them. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and see what we can do to come out with a little bit of a better product that we feel really comfortable with.
Yeah, I'll say I didn't mind it was obviously a lot like the outright bar in terms of the whole food approach and the size. The flavors weren't bad. I guess it was the consistency was a bit tough, and I think that just meant that you couldn't fully experience the flavors. They didn't really have much.
Yeah, and Mark,
they were there.
Mark,
I definitely
good friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. I mean, I'm an outright consumer at the same time. So really, really cool bar. Our bar was very similar. We decided to kind of go
different ingredients.
Different ingredients.
Yeah.
We wanted to play with some MCTs because it plays off of our protein currently, the medium chain triglycerides. Went with a lower sugar option. I felt like, that would resonate a little bit better with our consumer.
That is also the one knock that I've consistently heard about the outright bar is that it does taste good, but it's
even for me,
it's not a bodybuilder type bar.
No, I mean, I'm pretty strict on my diet, and if you're eating a couple of those bars a day, I mean, I never consume 30 grams of sugar in a day. You know what I mean? So to get that from 2 bars, to me, I probably wouldn't do. So that's kind of why we decided to take that strategy and go a little bit lower with the sugar. But like you said, I mean, it's definitely not a bad product. I still got people that rave about the product. But we want to make the best product we can make. And we just weren't overly happy with the consistency issues. You get 2 bars in the same box and they'd be slightly different at the end of the day. And I've heard, similar feedback on some of these other bars that are made at the same manufacturer. So, again, I've had outright bars, and they also vary from the flavor systems, right? So, some of them are different, bigger, smaller, consistency, textures a little bit different based on the flavor profile. Some are a little softer, some are not. So we just decided to go a different route. Mark's done a great job with his bar and really capturing that market, and props to him for doing that. But at the end of the day, our online customers weren't super happy with the bar we released. So we're going to go back, might go a completely different approach, maybe a lower sugar option than even what we started with, and maybe a different type of bar. So.
Yeah, I would have thought if you wanted the flavors to shine, I would have thought the like the My Bar candy bar style. I thought it would have just been suitable, because those ones, I mean, they're just like the My Bar. The first few, remember the first lot I had was just, I mean, it was one of the earliest.
But and we won't dive too deep into the details here, but you've got a lot of manufacturers that basically make the same product for everybody.
Yes, yeah.
When we released My Bar, it was big for us. It was actually I think it actually was the biggest new product we ever launched at ProSubs over the years in the first year in terms of gross revenue.
Wow.
So it did really, really well. But what happened was, next thing you know, the next year there was 7 other My Bars that were released.
I said that everyone who says this to me
under different brands.
They were like, that's exactly I'm like, so what do you think happened? Like, why did the My Bar not stay as popular? And I was like, well, it was plain and simple. My Bar was the first big one to come out when Quest kind of became less popular. And then you had Muscle Farm was around the same time. Muscle Tip was around the same.
There were so many of them that came out. And I think what happened was we had My Bar in there. I mean, Quest was obviously still strong, but it was a little bit on the decline.
It was different. Quest was a very
different bar.
Different
bar. The Oh Yeah One bar was actually doing really well here in America at the time, which again is more like a Quest bar.
That's more of a Quest
type bar. So ours, was still lower sugar, but it wasn't a net 1 gram type of bar, focused on taste, obviously. But next thing you know, these retailers that were selling My Bar, Quest, One Bar, now they've got 9 other My Bar companies flooding it in there. And of course, they brought most of them in, and then you just saturation. At that point, it becomes saturated, right? You've got 4 other bars that are similar to My Bar, but some different flavors that My Bar doesn't come in, and then it kind of just saturates everybody.
Yeah, it was tricky at that time. I
remember.
remember.
The bars you have to keep in mind too is, bars for the most part are best up to about 6 to 8 months, right, from manufacturing date. Just to keep it soft, texture, flavor. You'll get a year to year and a half shelf life on them. But they taste best if consumed usually within the first 12 months, even better 6 months. When these stores and distributors got saturated with all these other bars, the turns slow down, right? So we're still selling product, just not as many. Well, at that point, bars start to sit longer, and the longer bars sit there, they'll turn a little bit over time. Then it became into a situation where we just got stuck with a lot of product because sales started to slow down. And when you're stuck with a lot of product, a lot of boxes, a lot of wrappers, it becomes a pretty bad financial issue. So at ProSubs, we decided to get out of it at that point. And you live and learn. These are things I've learned over the time. Now, we had really, really high minimum order quantities at ProSubs for My Bar. Now looking back, there's a lot of manufacturers where you don't need to run that much product. Even our loaded bar, we were able to run a small run where the risk is not too bad. So, for us right now to move away and do something different, we're not really exposed. We sold all the products, so we're good there. I don't have $100,000 in boxes laying around or wrappers. So that's the other thing too. There's a lot more manufacturing out there. guys that are open to doing smaller production runs. And being a small company like we are still, keeping cash flow is important. Obviously, you can't tie it all up in inventory at the end of the day. So, but the bar markets, of all the categories I've ever experienced, the bar category is the hardest category. It's just
you get things like with the My Bar situation, where if you get something good, it's not too long before everyone else thinks, why don't I give it a go? And it's kind of that when brands do protein powders, they'll do like a birthday cake, it'll be a hit, then everybody does a birthday cake. I don't
know if you remember this. We were at ProSubs. We were the first one to do a glazed donut protein. Do you remember that?
Oh shit, you were.
It was in our PS way. You probably even did a post about it, but we did a glazed donut PS way.
Oh wow, yeah.
About 4 or 5 months later, there's 3 other brands with a donut flavor.
It's a hard thing, and protein bar is tough because, as you say, you don't want to. If you're one of the first, it costs a shitload of money to be one of the first, and then if everyone comes on.
Well, you know what the other thing with protein bars, and I guess this is more related to foods in general. When it comes to pre-workout powders, BCAAs, even protein powders, the feedback we get from people is usually overly positive. They love it, tastes great, this and that. Food items like protein bars are all over the map.
Oh, yeah.
Like me and you can say we love this protein bar. Have somebody over here that thinks it's absolutely terrible. It's crazy. And one of the surveys we did for when we were talking about protein bars, we asked our following, what are some protein bars you currently consume? Someone put on there the Gatorade protein bar.
Oh, they make a protein bar? I didn't even know that.
Hey, I didn't know they made a protein bar, but there's no way the Gatorade protein bar can be a great tasting bar. And nothing against those guys. You know what I mean? But like, if that's what we're going after, like that's completely different. You know what I mean? So when it comes to foods, I just feel like everybody's palate is different. What their expectation is totally different. And you have to almost be comfortable knowing 8 out of 10 people might not think it's the best. Because we're so used to 9.9 out of 10 feedback on our products. You start seeing a 6 and 10, a 7 and 10. We're just not used to it. But that's kind of how the functional food space works.
It gets even crazier when you get to Europe. I can tell you the variety that they.
I would bet. While we're talking about bars, and this is off subject, but there's a bar that I think it's made in Europe. I think it's doing really, really well. Is it Barbells?
Oh man. That brand, I came across them, what was it, 3 years ago when I was in Iceland, and I went into a supermarket there, and it was €1. It was at the front, and I was like, shit, I'm fucking starving. I need to eat something. And it was at the front, and it wasn't like a supermarket. It's like a discount supermarket. And in Iceland, something for €1 was not seen. So I was like, shit, picked it up.
Right.
It was like their currency, but equal to €1. So I grabbed one of each and just walked out, and I bit into it, and I stopped, and I went, holy shit. And I said to my wife, I was like, eat this. And she's like, I said, eat it. And she ate it, and she's like, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. And then we later learned it was Swedish company, giant in Sweden. There isn't a gas station, convenience store, supermarket you will go
They're where they like the Grenade of the UK,
Oh, it's even more intense in Sweden.
Yeah.
Like they're above.
I saw a bunch of people posting about it. I've seen you even talk really highly about it.
It is
a couple boxes a couple weeks ago. Honestly, it's okay. It didn't blow my mind.
That's the thing. It's like, I think I'm a big fan of candy bar style bars, so kind of like the My Bar. And
I'm not a big fan of the nuggety type of bar, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that bar. So again, not bad at all. I mean, it's a good bar, but as much as people rave about it, I was expecting to be blown away personally. But it just shows you how like feedback is all over the map.
It is.
And they're probably doing hundreds of millions of dollars in that bar. Even if West was the last bar on the shelf, I couldn't eat it at this point. And again, nothing against them. I mean, they're, $500 million company. So it's just crazy.
Well, that's the other thing.
The palate is different.
The barbells ones worth mentioning is that their flavors. Like I remember having their salty peanut, which is amazing, and I had their coconut. Nowhere near the same kind of, didn't taste the
I
same.
think I had a salted peanut and there was a chocolate I got.
Yeah,
The chocolate was different consistency and texture than the other ones.
I think
It had
it's
like sprinkles on it.
crunchy fudge.
Yeah, but it was a different texture. It was a different type of bar almost.
That's the thing, when they do these different flavors, they vary so much, and like you can be in love with one and just
not like the other one.
Like you could have wrapped it in something else. And so some of their flavors are like, I mean, amazing. I say probably 4 or 5. They have 13, I think. Actually, no, it might be 11. They have a lot in Sweden. But they also do protein ice cream. They do ice cream on a stick. Yeah. And that shit tastes amazing. They do, but the one thing that I've always admired them is in Sweden, they're not put in the snack, the health aisle. If you go to the Swedish stores, their protein bars are above candy bars. They're like right next to them.
They put them in that, they put them over there.
Yeah, and then they'll spread out.
Obviously, it's more accessible for the consumer shopping for a candy bar, and they say, "Hey, look, this looks like a healthy option."
Yeah,
smart. I think most people would love to be categorized there.
Yeah, that's the one advantage I admire about Scandinavia is you go to these, and the brands spread out. They'll have ice cream next to sugary ice cream. They'll have, they got their protein.
There's a lot of great bars that come out of Europe. And you probably know this. Bars in Europe are a lot different than bars in America. Sweetness levels, texture, they're just completely different. But I would say there's probably more successful bars made in Europe than actually in the USA.
I don't think they're as successful as in monetary wise. I think US still does. Does.
Well, the hard part is it's tough for those brands to come here.
Yeah, it's very hard.
If those brands were able to capture sales in America and combine what they do in Europe, they would probably be from a monetary perspective.
That's what I think Barbells is doing so well.
But I think, again, I think Americans, they love super sweet stuff, which is completely different than European. It's just different. Like, we talk about Grenade. I actually think Grenade is a good bar.
Grenade is another one of my top 5s.
I love I think it's the white chip chocolate, I think.
The original.
My favorite. I had that at FIBO for the first time a couple years back, and that one actually blew me away. But what's crazy is here in America, they haven't been able to do a lot.
They haven't been able to. A lot of their flavors as well. They when they brought them to the US, they changed some names, they changed some colors because they felt that, like Jaffa Cake, for example.
We wouldn't know what it is.
They didn't bring it, so they were just like, "There's no way. There's not a chance in hell." And I think when they did Cookies and Cream, or they changed it to like a blue because it was a more familiar color to US, because they originally had it white. But it is this, and as you say, I think the Barbells protein bar is the best there is. In Europe, that's considered the gold standard to almost everyone. But then you're saying like it's hard to make something that everybody in Europe would like, and then expect Americans to like it too.
For sure. And again, for us going back to bars, I mean, our goal is to make a bar, obviously, that we can sell in America first, being an American-based company. But we know our current online community wants a bar. They're buying another company's bar right now. So that's where we focus. It's probably not going to be $100 million at the end of the day, but it can get us in some functional food play. It plays off of our number one selling product, which is our loaded protein. So it's a great extension off of that protein powder. So we'll get back in the game on it. Obviously we'd love to, do some business in the retail world. And hey, if we can sell some of this stuff internationally, I was actually able to get some loaded bar. I got some to, quite a bit of countries already. So, and overall the feedback was good, but we just, again, we didn't feel like it was a 10 out of 10. And I think that's kind of
the RYSE branding and the name. You've built quite a, it has that, I don't know, even if you don't know the brand, it doesn't look like it just a fresh
looks premium, right? Looks premium. And, again, I have to divert the credit to Nick. He's built this brand. I've only been on since January. So, but as we, hopefully work together and take this brand global and continue to build it. But you're right. It is, nobody likes the term lifestyle brand, but it is more of a mainstream type of brand. It's not a hardcore necessarily bodybuilding brand. It does appeal to all genders, demographics, age groups. But we really focus on flavor. And have you even tried our protein?
I think so. I think but I think I tried it way back, like
So I definitely need to get you
probably
some
early
more to
years.
try. But when I tried the protein for the first time when coming over, I was blown away. Straight up, honest as I could be. I tried the cinnamon toast crunch protein, and I'm not really a cinnamon person, and I was blown away on the cinnamon toast crunch. We have a chocolate cookie blast right now, which is a deep dark chocolate base with basically crushed up Oreo pieces, cookie pieces in it, it's unbelievable. So that's what people hold us up to in terms of flavors. So we need, our Tiger's Blood pre-workout people rave about. The Baja Burst,
I've heard
the Baja and our RTD people rave about. So we just didn't feel like we had that with the bar. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and try to do it right.
On the supplement side is because I mean, as far as you're saying with functional, with the drink and you guys have been busy with the supplements. It's the last I think the last new one you did was the Blackout series, if I'm not mistaken. It was the
new supplements, or like in supplement side.
Yeah, I'm assuming you guys. I imagine you're always hard at
We
work.
extended the Project Blackout pre-workout with 2 new flavors.
Oh yeah, and the capsules. Yeah,
the Baja and the mango this year. We added a 5th flavor in our white pre-workout, which is our core series. We actually launched it for the 4th of July weekend. It's called Freedom Rocks.
Yeah.
That has that popping rock technology in there. We actually brought that out now because it did really well and people liked it. So we launched that flavor. We've launched a couple new protein.
Are you keeping that on?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, we're keeping it on. So yeah, it's a go forward SKU. We're still selling it now. But we've actually been focusing a lot on protein flavors because, again, being our top selling product.
Yeah.
We did the Fruity Crunch, I think earlier. It was either late last year or earlier this year, which is a kind of like a Fruity Pebbles type flavor. And then we did the Chocolate Cookie Blast probably about 3 or 4 months ago. We do have a 5th flavor of protein coming out at the end of this month. I could just tell everybody it's going to be it's going to be more vanilla based, but it's not going to be a straight vanilla. So focusing on adding there because we're winning with protein and it's doing really well. We also expanded into a larger size, which is really important for the international business. We had a 27 serving, which you could say on average is about a 2-pounder. We expanded to a 54 serving, so we doubled it. Typically your international business like the larger sizes. So we did double that up. L-carnitines we launched earlier this year. That was a new SKU, probably in February or March. Kind of went with some unique flavors. We did a zebra fruit, which was kind of different.
Yeah, I remember asking you about that.
Yeah, so not a lot of
people,
that
was.
Us old guys know what it is. The kids don't know, but a lot of people, I get messages say, I tried that zebra. They don't even know what they're buying. They just like it because it's got a zebra on it. Like,
I mean, that's the way the flavors go these days.
It's crazy. And people really rave about our zebra fruit L-carnitine. So that's been doing well. I feel like we launched a couple other things. We did just recently.
Yeah, you did the capsules.
A liquid pump capsule product.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, just some betaine nitrate and glycerol. But what's really cool, it comes in a clear cap. You can actually see the liquid inside of it. We created a new packaging design with it where it's kind of see-through that lets you see it. You'll see a couple other products probably by the end of the year that'll come out with that same packaging, that clear blackout series packaging that the pump capsules come in currently. We are working on a few other products there to come out in it. We are working on a vegan protein right now.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Actually something we wanted to do for a while, kind of got slowed down a little bit with COVID. And we've had a lot of products. I mean, RTD has been a new one for us. So keeping that in stock, obviously making sure we keep protein in stock during these times. We can't run out of those products because we got to continue to sell them. So some things push back a little bit, but we're picking back up on the vegan protein. People would say why? Well, we saw a lot of whey protein right now. People do look at RYSE as a protein brand. And we feel like we have the guy who's a flavor artist who can make the best tasting vegan protein that's been made.
I'll tell you, that is a challenge that I've heard.
Well, every company probably says it, right? I mean, that's kind of
the thing. Is it happened last year? I think it was late last year. Someone said, "Oh, my vegan protein is the best out there," and I was like, "Oh, okay, this should be cool." Because at that time it was still quiet, didn't have too many people, and I'm like, he wouldn't say this unless it was. And then I tried it and I was like, oh, I mean, it's not bad. And then the next person said it. Then the next person said it. I was like, maybe there's someone flavoring these that's telling them.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, it depends. Who are you comping against? Who's your demographic? Who's your consumer? I think when it comes to the vegan world, it's completely different. You gotta understand who you're going after, right? Are you going after the Vegas, the Garden of Life, hippie?
Oh, if you compare yourself to mainstream brands, right? It's not hard to beat them. I've tried some of these bigger ones.
I mean, literally go in your backyard, cut up some grass, put some plants in it, throw water in, and drink it, right?
Well, that's the thing. I think though is because some people will say it's the best tasting out there, and they tried those big ones, but then others will say it's the best tasting out there, and they'll actually will have tried some of the best tasting ones. Like I think Nutrix does a very good one.
Nutrix actually does a really good one.
And
the Ghost guys do a good one.
And I would the only other one.
And Doug say the core one tastes really good. I haven't been able to try it.
It's the core one's not bad. I mean, I've had having the peanut butter now. It's hard because it definitely masks that grittiness. So it's but it doesn't have that pop that I kind of get with the flavor pop like you get with Ghost and Nutrix, where you know you're not just masking it, you are actually making it taste.
And I don't know if you know, do you know the boys from Beam?
Oh yeah, that's another one.
Good friends of mine. I think they made a pretty good tasting
Yes,
one.
they did. That was another one. I think the only other one that
last week. My girlfriend actually drinks some vegan stuff, so I let her try this stuff out. So she liked some of the stuff they sent as well.
Yeah, they make another great one. It's in like the only other good one I've had on top of those 4 would be from Switch in Australia.
I've heard you mention that. Obviously, I've never tried those guys.
Theirs is like the other guys, the ones you're talking, their masking ability is very similar, and their flavors. But the Switch Nutrition one, I don't know what he did. He did something funky, but like it's a different kind of better tasting vegan. I think he was saying.
If I get my hands on a bottle, I'll have the guys in Oz send me a bottle of that stuff.
It's but they also do different.
There's so many different ways you can go with vegan, right?
Just make sure you compare it to some of those good ones.
And you have to compare, right? You have to compare, but you also have to know the demographic that you're going after.
Yeah.
The type of product you're making, the type of blend you're making. Are you trying to go after a full essential amino acid profile? Are you beefing up the amino content by adding extra leucine or essentials, right? My goal is, when I say we want to make the best tasting vegan, I would love to make a vegan protein that tastes as good as our whey.
That's a hard thing to do.
It's going to be hard. So, we've actually got some feedback as of recent. And again, I'm not the vegan guy. Nick is not the vegan guy. We actually have some pretty big vegan athletes that's helping us through the process, because at the end of the day, everything today is about authenticity. Yeah. And if we're not just going to make a vegan protein to have a vegan protein. There needs to be a mission. There needs to be a reason for it. And our vegan athletes who promote vegan products is the reason. So they'll help us in terms of flavoring and making the product that we want to make, and obviously be the advocate and faces of this series, if you will. But I feel confident that we can make something, but in some of the data that we got, we talk about the texture or the grit or the pop, as you say, with some of the stuff, right? That doesn't appeal to me. I don't know. Like, that's probably the biggest thing for me personally to get over. I'm just not a fan of it, right? But you talk to some, I'm going to say, more fitness-oriented, archetype 1 people, they almost expect it, which is interesting. So because they're vegan protein people, they actually like that grittiness.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed.
So, one of the debates were, do we try to completely get rid of it, mask it, not have it at all? Well, then we're hearing from our vegan crowd, no, we actually like that. So you have to be, obviously, in today's world of R&D and anything you do, there's so many ways to get feedback from your customers. And if you're a brand owner and you're not doing this, shame on you, shame on you. The days of us just creating products because we personally like to make them, those days are pretty much gone, right? There's so much data, consumer stuff out there that, you should be making products that your consumers either are asking for or wanting or buying from another brand, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of led us into this. We'll see how things play out. I would say probably a 50-50 chance that we'll be able to launch this vegan product by the end of this year.
Wow.
But we're not going to launch it until we get it right. So
you already got like 6 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. That's why I put a 50-50 on there. It's probably going to fall into Q1 of next year. Actually, the guys are today. They're actually at the manufacturer whipping up some flavors and testing some stuff as we speak. So depending on how that goes, but I do have a guy that's integrated into this business. His background is a flavor artist. So when it comes to flavor systems, masking, that's what he does for a living. And if you've tried any of the RYSE products, you could say it's probably some of the best stuff out there. So having that guy on our staff, if you will, I feel pretty confident that we should be able to make one of the best tasting vegan proteins that we can possibly make. And again, we're not going 100% stevia, naturally sweetened type of play.
Okay,
Not our consumers, right? We're looking for people that probably have been long-time whey consumers of protein, and now for whatever reason, maybe they're allergic, maybe they don't like how it feels on their stomach, they feel heavy, maybe it's a lactose issue. For whatever reason, these are people that have probably taken whey or other type of protein supplements that are now vegan consumers. Those are who we're going after, and a lot of them are current consumers currently. So they're not saying I can't have sucralose or this and that. So knowing from a flavor system perspective, we should be able to make something that tastes really good because we're not limited or bound to some of those things, right?
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out. Pretty excited about that one. I've got some really good international demand on vegan protein as well. I think you can get really creative with flavors, whether you're mixing, caramels or, if you mix in some fruit stuff with your chocolates or vanillas, or, it helps help with the sweetness levels. So there's a lot of different creative ways you can go with vegan. And then obviously there's tons of blends, pea, watermelon, apricot, tons of blends you can do. Obviously you want to make sure whatever blend you put in there, you can get pretty much a full essential amino acid profile.
That's one of the trends you used to be seeing as the added leucine. I think usually it's a gram that they add in per serving.
Yeah, a lot of people add maybe, we're from a gram. I've seen upwards of 5 grams of leucine just to beef it up. But if you don't, chances are you're going to use pea because it does carry a lot of the essential profile. And then figure out probably what the other 1 to 3 protein sources you're going to put in there. See if you need to bump it up with any leucine or essentials on top. Then you can look at things like velocitol or, some other things that help maybe with absorption of protein and nitrogen retention as well. So we'll see how it plays out, but we've got some pretty cool ideas. I'm banking on our flavor guy to make this thing really good, and we'll make sure to get you out of tub as soon as it's ready.
Yeah, definitely let me know how it goes. I've had a few challenges. I had 2 new plant proteins this week, and someone said they were amazing. And see, I drink things, and if I think something's disgusting, my reaction is relatively the same as if it was just average. Right. I gave it to my wife, and she's like, "Did you know this tasted like shit?" And I was like, I just wanted to gauge. I just wanted to know how bad it is.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been in the same situation. Again, because I'm not a vegan consumer, it's tough for me to say if it tastes good or not, right? Because I think all vegan stuff today, I'm still going to take a whey product.
Oh yeah, you do have to go at it like.
But then I give it to my girlfriend, and she's like, "Wow, this is amazing," and I just don't get it. Like,
I've learned.
I would drink this over whey, and I'm like, "There's no way I would do that." You know what I mean?
I could never do that. I have yet to come across something that's convinced me that it's like they're good, but I do understand that when I drink these things, you have to expect that thick texture. You have to expect like that casein type graininess.
Yeah, super thick.
And the taste isn't gonna
bite on there.
You're not gonna get a sweet taste. You're gonna get a moderate kind of smoothness. And I always take them with that in mind, but it is still fun giving it to someone who absolutely doesn't like them. It just gives you a reality check.
We might navigate down that path a little bit more with, maybe a greens product and some other stuff, depending on the success of how the vegan protein does. We do have a nice roadmap for 2021. Obviously, seeing how all this craziness around the world, ends up. But, we would love to have, most categories of products offered under the RYSE brand. So But as far as this year, you'll see another protein flavor in about 4 weeks, maybe vegan by the end of the year. I don't think we'll get our 4th flavor of RTD out by the end of this year, so probably Q1, you'll see a 4th flavor of the RTD. Bar relaunch, Q1 of next year. We are working on a pretty cool creatine muscle building product, probably going to roll over into Q1 next year. A couple different forms of creatine, an ingredient called peak ATP, which I'm a big fan of right now. So kind of a performance muscle building creatine
daily
product.
all-in-one kind of thing.
What's that?
Like a daily all-in-one kind of.
Daily, yeah, take it every day, no stim, muscle building type of product. So that'll probably roll into Q1 as well. That'll be in a powder form. We've talked about we make a protein pancake mix that not a lot of people talk about, but it's actually a seller for us.
It's an odd one because when you came out with that one, I just remember being like, that's an odd thing to see thrown.
I've never been at a company that had a product like that. So when I came over here, I was pleasantly surprised to see how well it did. And I think because the category is not overly saturated, there's not a ton of competition there. We're able to do well. So we're looking to expand additional flavors in that as well. And that kind of plays in the functional food space, but also, again, it brands off of our protein, which
it does.
So it kind of fits all avenues there. So we might look at a larger size bag and also some additional flavors next year in that. We'll probably drop a couple other protein flavors next year. I am working on a gainer right now, which is going to be more targeted for our international business. There's some markets like the Middle East and things like that where your 12 gainers are really, really big sellers.
The 20-pounder bags.
Yeah, so here in America, the gainers are not huge categories. But this year, we've been able to actually get RYSE into over 30 new countries since January.
Oh, wow.
So the brand has expanded a lot internationally. We're getting some demand now for people wanting a RYSE gainer. We'll probably go with our blackout packaging on that one. But that's currently in development right now. There's a lot of stuff, and probably some stuff we're not discussing right now that we'll look into. We've tossed around the ideas of protein RTDs. We definitely would love to, and we are going to do a carbonated beverage at some point.
That was going to be a question of mine, but I was like,
for sure, we need to have it. Nick wants to do it. I want to do it. Again, learning from my experience at Power Potion, I want to take our time. There's, tons and tons of brands now that have carbonated energy. So super saturated. I just want to make sure we do it right and take our time with it. So don't have an ETA on that. I would say hopefully next year at some point.
If you can do a protein RTD, I definitely would appreciate it. I keep telling everyone when they say what the best tasting one in America is, and I was like, I'm not going to lie, a lot of them are bearable, but they're just not like I'm used to.
I had to get a protein drink and I didn't have powder with me and I'm traveling, I would grab a lean body. I don't know if you've had the lean body RTDs.
I've had most of them, but they're all
40 grams of protein. Taste okay, like that. They've been around forever.
Have you tried Grenades one?
We don't really have those here,
Oh no, but I mean in the UK they have. That one can pass as chocolate milk. It's insane.
Wow.
Sugar's a little bit high, like not like crazy high, and not carbs aren't that high.
Or like a Monster Milk, kinda.
Yeah, probably. Barbells makes one as well. They when you get to Europe, like they don't mind the extra carbs and sugar. I think they sit around 25 grams of protein, maybe 10 carbs.
10 carbs, yeah.
So, but like that's the thing. In America, you don't get that option. You have like they all pretty much around the same, and they all taste around the same. Whereas when you go for these ones, and I'm just like you need.
Again, protein RTDs are they're complicated. I'm interested to see what the Redcon one does. I actually wanted to do a Tetra Pak RTD at ProSups a few years ago, just because I saw a hole there. Lean Body was kind of the only one that was still around, but obviously we're never able to do it. Redcon looks like they're doing a Tetra Pak. I think it's a 40, maybe more, 50-gram protein drink.
Optimum has one. Do they got the one in the gold standard? Optimum has gold standard one.
Did they come out with one?
That was it.
Tetra Pak or plastic bottle?
It it was the Tetra. It was at GNC, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
They launched it alongside their gold standard Pre. It was very quiet. It wasn't really
Yeah.
it didn't make a lot of noise
Hear
about
about it, yeah. I mean, I couldn't tell you last time I've been to a GNC either, you know. But we'll see. I mean, when it comes to that stuff, you're talking high runs.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
protein stuff, high runs. If you're doing plastic bottle, people would be amazed of how many plastic bottles you have to commit to for a production run. I don't know the specifics on the Tetra Pak world just because I never got that far into it, but I have to believe it's not low. So, you know, cost of entry to get into this space of a protein. Again, we're talking protein, right? Nobody makes great margin on protein. It doesn't matter if it's a powder, an RTD, a bar, you know, even a BCA. Like, you know, BCAs are protein at the end of the day. Anything protein related, you're just not going to make a lot of money. And you have to look at it as how much cash does it take to produce, and then how long does it take to get back your investment, and then what do you make on that investment, right? You know, when you're growing a brand, it's all about allocation of dollars, and you know, where do you put those dollars that, you know, you can make money, you can turn it really quickly, get more money back in, order it and get it back out. Protein's just, you know, it's a brand builder. Like you have to have protein to be a legitimate brand. But it's a margin and cash flow killer at the same time. So,
Well, as you touched on earlier, it's one of those things where, like the RTD, people see the protein, but like, oh, I wonder what else they have. So
that's what's been pretty cool about coming here to RYSE. I mean, at ProSubs, we sold quite a bit of protein internationally, but domestically, we, you know, obviously everybody knew us as Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll, right? Hydro BCA started to do well the last couple of years, but ProSubs wasn't known as a protein brand. So, you know, coming over here, it's been kind of cool being at a brand where protein is what we're known for, and not so much the pre-workout. It's kind of the opposite. So I feel like it's a little bit easier to sell somebody a pre-workout once they like your protein versus sell them a protein once you like your pre-workout. Because at the end of the day, everybody takes a protein for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody takes a pre-workout. So, you know, all those Mr. Hyde consumers that we had at ProSubs over the years, they were buying a protein. It wasn't really a ProSubs protein. Could have been Optimum, could have been Dymatize, could have been RYSE. It could have been another brand. But once you get the consumer loyal, because I feel like protein is the hardest category to get a consumer to make a switch. Once you get them into your protein, I feel like it's a lot easier to get them into other products. So
that's why we did the protein wars. That's
yeah,
why we
right. Yep.
That's
But no, I mean, overall for us, you know, we were a little bit lucky being a online direct-to-consumer brand prior to COVID. Obviously, with lockdowns and the craziness that's gone on this year, the online world has been pretty stable. So consumers have still been buying online, whether they were working out at home or whatnot. So thank God that business for us has been pretty stable. We weren't overly exposed. You know, a lot of brands had products in GNCs and vitamin shops that closed down. A lot of bankruptcy stuff happened. So, you know, that hurt a lot of your bigger legacy brands. Since we're small, we're nimble, we've been able to make new products during this time.
it's
you know,
rarity.
I personally focused on a lot of this downtime to really put out this brand on all these platforms, you know, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, WeChat, you name it. I've been really pushing hard on the social media platforms. And at the same time, internationally speaking, it's probably been the first time ever where countries have been locked down. And usually the hardest thing about an international distributor is to get them on the phone. They're so busy. And because of lockdown, it forced them to go home. I was able to get them on the phone, get them on a WhatsApp call, Zoom call, and present them this RYSE brand. So, you know, I really maximized my time and effort during this time to get this brand presented. And hey, we've been fortunate enough to grow this brand in over 30 countries during this pandemic. And again, we're not talking millions and millions of dollars here, but get the product into this country, get it on shelf at some retail stores, which is only going to grow, hopefully, as this stuff passes by us. You know, we've been able to really get this brand in some retail stores here in America. We talk about Australia and New Zealand. We're actually relaunching the RYSE brand in Q1 of next year. So we're kind of starting over. The brand was somewhat available in Australia prior to me coming here, but we're kind of relaunching it. I don't think the brand was ever really available in New Zealand, but it will be through Nutrition Systems here soon. and with
damn.
some reviews. So looking forward to that. We're also looking to expand our direct-to-consumer e-commerce play in some of these countries, where we'll basically have our own website, and we do kind of the same thing we do here in America, where we also offer that direct-to-consumer strategy. Countries like Australia, India, Chile, and some other markets that we're focused on, the UK as well. Another platform for us. So, all things considered, being a small company, I mean, we're talking 5 employees here. I'm one of them. We're fortunate enough to kind of stay afloat, survive during these times, actually grow. We'll actually grow this year.
Yeah, it sounds like you've pushed it. You've definitely pushed it.
But we've got a lot of work to do. I want to build this brand bigger than what I've built it in the past. I feel like it's the right brand for the right time, from a packaging, a messaging perspective. I think we can really do some stuff with this brand. I've got a great partner in Nick, who really understands the online e-commerce world, so he can continue to drive that ship while I continue to grow this brand domestically and internationally.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys have been doing a tremendous job while everyone has been sort of locked down. And thank you for taking the time and chatting with me.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having us. We definitely got to do this a little bit more often. Hopefully next year we'll be a little bit more organized, and we can get some of the new product stuff out to you a little bit earlier and keep you in the loop on that stuff. And I'll definitely shoot you out some of this new stuff that we're working on to try.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, my brother. Well, stay safe, man. Looking forward to catching up again.
Awesome. That was easy.
All right, brother. Take care.